It was the weekend before my 32nd birthday. Amidst the preparation, my husband walked into my office and handed me divorce papers. No hesitation. No guilt. Just a crisp stack of betrayal, white against his dark and steady hand. The air in my office was thick with the smell of roasted coffee from the espresso machine I hadn't turned off all morning. Meanwhile, outside my office, I could hear the city humming as usual, the lazy whir of car engines from the street below. The distant call of a hawker selling apple, gala, and cold drinks in the slowly baking heat of Lagos, a city that Lagos never sleeps. A city that only pauses to the rhythm and the heartbeat of gossip. Akin's shoes clicked softly on the marble floor as he stepped closer. His cologne, Tom Ford, the one I bought him last Christmas, lingered in my office like a memory that refused to fade. I looked up at him from behind my desk, the afternoon light cutting across his face, and thought. He stood there looking at me. No hi, no hello, and no greetings. This is what arrogance looks like when it's freshly pressed and well-fed. He stared at me for a while, and said nothing at first. Then placed the envelope on my desk, directly on top of the real estate blueprints I'd been reviewing before he walked in. You might want to read this, he said quietly, his tone polished but cold, the way you'd speak to an assistant you're firing from her job. I didn't touch it. My hands stayed on my laptop keyboard, frozen between instinct and disbelief. It was divorce papers. It's strange how a single word can rearrange your heartbeat. He must have mistaken my silence for weakness, because he smirked, a small, smug lift of his lips that used to charm me once upon a time. Funke, we both know this hasn't been working for a while, he began, rehearsed lines dripping from his mouth like oil. You deserve to be happy too. Happy? The word felt like a slap dressed in civility. I watched him, really watched him, the crisp white shirt, the gold cufflinks, the faint tan line on his ring finger where his wedding band had already been removed. The man who once called me his piece was now here to deliver war with a signature. The air between us tightened. Then I smiled. You've made your decision, I said, my voice steady, and my gaze unflinching. So have I, Akin. He blinked, uncertain for the first time. What does that mean? I smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. It means you'll understand soon enough. He looked at me for a moment longer, perhaps searching for tears that weren't coming, then turned and walked out, his cologne trailing behind him like a ghost of promises gone stale. The door shut softly, but the silence that followed was loud enough to echo. I exhaled. And stood slowly. The battle line has been drawn. I muttered to myself. We shall see. I added. Outside, the clouds were gathering, the kind that promised an evening storm. I slowly walked to the window, unperturbed, and stared at the skyline we'd once dreamed of conquering. Buildings we helped design, streets our billboards now adorned. Ajala and Akinwand properties. His name and mine, side by side. Funny how things change. When I first met Akin, he was standing in line for registration at the University of Lagos, tall, nervous, clutching a folder that looked older than his dreams. He had that kind of boyish charm that made you believe he'd figure life out eventually. I did more than believe, I invested in Akin. After graduation, when he had nowhere to go, and nowhere to stay, I took him in. My mother warned me about Akin. And my friends laughed at me and called me foolish, blind and silly. But love has a way of making poverty feel poetic. I remember those years in my small surreal apartment, peeling paint, the hum of the generator cutting through the night, and Akin sprawled on the couch with job application letters scattered all around like paper confetti of hope. He'd sigh, rub his temples, and say, "Babe, one day we'll laugh about all this. Trust me." He'd say to me. And I'd smile and hand him a plate of rice and stew, pretending not to notice the exhaustion in his eyes. Every Monday, I'd press a few thousand naira into his palm, Just something to keep you going, I'd say. He never refused, just squeezed my hand and promised me the world. That was akin. That was the young man I fell in love with, despite the odds. I didn't know then that I was building an empire on borrowed gratitude. Yes, on borrowed gratitude. It was at a party one night, my aunt's 50th, that I introduced him to her. She worked in property development and mentioned a new company hiring interns. I remember Akin's eyes lighting up like a boy who had just found the last golden ticket. That job was his doorway to everything that came after: connections, contracts, confidence. And through it all, I was right there: investor, accountant, partner, wife, believer. Together we rose. Together we built Ajala and Akinwand properties. Except now, together was suddenly too small a word for his ambitions. I turned back to my desk and finally opened the envelope. The papers were thick, printed, stamped, and signed. My name looked foreign beside his. The pages were filled with legal languages and terminologies, and they were cold, calculated, and deliberate. But there was something almost poetic about the line where he requested full separation of assets in accordance with mutual consent. Mutual? Really? I almost laughed. What he didn't realize, what he never even thought to check, was the silent clause I inserted years ago, buried neatly in the business incorporation documents. A contingency I had added for administrative clarity, I'd told him. He never questioned it. Why would he? Back then, he trusted me. Now, he'll learn what trust costs when it's taken for granted. My phone buzzed, a message from my lawyer. Just one line: everything is in place. Whenever you're ready. I closed the file and smiled faintly. Ready wasn't the word. Prepared was more accurate. That night, as rain began to fall against the windows, I sat in the dark of my office, the city lights blinking like a heartbeat below. My reflection stared back from the glass, calm, composed, and dangerous. But something in me was about to unleash itself, the way the world has never seen. I thought of my daughters asleep in their room upstairs, their soft breathing, their innocence untouched by adult betrayals. I thought of the promises I made to myself, that I would never be the woman who breaks quietly. No. If this was the war he wanted, I would fight it like a woman who built the battlefield. My name is Hannah Omadala Ajala. I am 32 years old. And this is not a story of heartbreak. This is strategy. I'm being strategic.